Take this mind of mine. Take this mind of mine.
We are live. Hello, everybody. It's been a few weeks since I've been up on the YouTube and the Rockfin. My microphone's working. I got two distinguished guests tonight. We're here with Father Deacon, Dr.
When are they showing up?
Well, Shoot. I got Father Deacon Dr. Ananias here. I got Jay Dyer. You can find both of these gentlemen on YouTube as well as Rockfin. Father Deacon, are you on Rockfin now too?
I was invited. Should I go on?
I mean, all the cool kids are doing it, so I would say yes.
We can't make your moral decisions for you, man. I mean,
Oh, that's exactly what I pay you to do. What are you talking about?
But we got a great topic to talk about today. We are going to go deep on the culture war, the problems with the culture war. We're going to be kind of doing a little bit of expose, critique of some of the major kind of toxic problems that we have in so-called, I don't even know what you want to call it, conspiracy circles, dissident left, dissident right, internet discourse. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a critiquing, right, of this. But it's not going to be a culture of critique or Frankfurt School style critique, because we're going to be critiquing this from the Christian worldview, from the Orthodox worldview, and discussing a lot of the major issues that we've all seen, especially over the years in the conspiracy world. So this stream is titled Nihilism, Relativism, and Conspiracy Candy Culture Poison Pills. So you got that red pill, you got the blue pill, and you got the black pill. And these are kind of the standard pills that people are overdosing on these days on the internet. A lot of people get red pilled, and that very quickly leads to a decision. Okay, you're gonna continue down this path of exploring and seeking truth, and of kind of shedding the old layers of what you thought were true, or you're gonna go back to the old world, you're gonna go back to the blue pill, or eventually that red pill, as I was ranting about in a recent stream, actually ends up leading most people to the black pill. And this is the black pill is not a place you want to be. It's not a place where you want to hang out at. Father Deacon Dr. Ananias is a philosophy professor. Am I correct in that assertion?
Yeah, among many things. I'm a sorcerer with words. Philosophy professor.
Do you think that's a valid critique of philosophy? That's basically word game sorcery for a lot of people. I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Most of the philosophers, they're just really erudite, learned con artists, and they're going to use their words, their word salad sorcery words, to confuse you and trap you and get you to believe in all kinds of false things while appearing to be very, very smart. So how do you beat bad philosophy with good philosophy? You don't abandon philosophy and thinking. You expose the con artists.
And it seems like a lot of the philosophy that we've been given, a lot of the philosophy, the kind of the path that the West took since the schism has led us into quite the mess, right? I mean, we got nihilism in the title here, so we're gonna kind of build that bridge of understanding. Would you mind kind of maybe giving like a little bit of a basic breakdown of the changes in like epistemology that we've seen leading up to, nihilism and ultimately postmodernism, which is kind of the underlying problem that we're getting at here with the culture war?
Yeah, you can follow this. It's why it's really important to study the history of ideas, is that they don't come out of a vacuum, right? That, somebody makes a mistake, somebody puts forth a position, and the next person comes along and overthrows that and puts forth another position. And so you can locate whatever problems that we're in, you can historically connect the dots that it was, it's because of this, and not necessarily like everything's determined, but it certainly provides the necessary conditions for the possibility. It removes certain kind of obstacles or restraints that would inevitably allow other things to come about. And so, the biggest kind of change that you see is within modernity, that you have a throwing off of kind of the tradition of Christianity and the way that God created the world. That there's real essences out there that and the world becomes mechanized through people like Descartes. God is replaced by man. So you really could probably trace humanism back to Descartes, because Descartes makes himself God in his epistemology, right, Jade? I think, therefore I am. And I can know all these things without God. And then as each philosopher comes along and critiques the other one, well, you can actually say that, you can't do this, and you get into the Enlightenment and skepticism. And it really shows that, and in one sense it's a good thing, it's kind of a stripping off of man's pretended autonomy. So even from the beginnings of philosophy, Western philosophy, is this ability to think that in different ways. I think it gets more radically pronounced in modernity, but the entire Western philosophic project is an autonomous project that I can know. I get your help later, God. Right now I'm busy justifying my own theories, and I can know and do all this stuff. Now, one thing that's good about modernity and the Enlightenment is that it kind of shows that everything that the predecessors had done before is unjustified. The downside of that is that post-modernity, and this gets into the kind of black pill, is that rather than kind of seeing and reorientating oneself to the true light, rather than inward, that like I'm the measure of all things, post-modernity is the black pill. There's kind of like, they take all the legitimate critiques of people like Hume and things that occurred in the Enlightenment, and they take it in the wrong direction. It's all doom and gloom. Like there is no meaning, there is no knowledge, there's nothing to, and I think that leads into a lot of the stuff that we're kind of talking about, the nihilism, both semantic, epistemic, and just, practically orienting oneself in community, I'd say, is a communal nihilism too.
Wow, and I like that term, communal nihilism, because that is kind of what we see in a lot of online communities right now. I mean, people have grouped themselves into these little pockets of internet culture. People who are maybe unable to talk about some of these things in their real life, and they're not able to talk about some of the deeper questions that they may have about, maybe even just, geopolitical workings, or, the machinations of the power mechanisms in the world. And they get to this point where they can't talk to people in their actual environment, and their families and their friends. And the internet becomes a place where, you can connect with people who are like-minded. But I guess the downside of that is you can get these, nihilistic, just communities of rootless, nihilist people who are all feeding off of each other in a certain way, right? Just like, bouncing these ever-shifting theories about who's running the world, who's really running the show, who's really in charge, who's really got all the power off of each other, and it's like there's nothing grounding.
Yeah, that's right. And online community is no surrogate for real relationships. And I've written about the dangers of technology, and technology in itself is not intrinsically evil. It's a tool, but technology never exists in a vacuum, and that it exists and embedded within kind of geopolitics and philosophical ideologies that dominate cultures. And what we see right now is, and this is how we know it's evil, is an inversion. Is that, like I said, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with like online communities and doing online stuff. We're doing it now. The danger and the evil is, like I said, it becomes a surrogate. If the image, if the thing online is once removed from me, you know, the real thing is the face-to-face contact, the kind of community, and then everything else derives its existence from there. The inversion is that it's been replaced, that the real relationship, the real stuff, by which is the measure of all other things, is the online technology. And then, you know, there's a whole host of things that we could talk about that, you know, as far as the speed of processing information, the ability to be deceived and to fall into despair and to manipulate data, how that's kind of opens a Pandora's box and allows this kind of stuff to happen. But most concerning is the fact that, you know, you hear kids, you take them out to a beautiful sunset through the mountains or something like that, and they can't enjoy it. And the reason why is that they're so addicted to their dopamine hits. And just like an addict, an addict can't enjoy anything but their dopamine hits. There's a kind of despair itself. So this is kind of a postmodern phenomenon that we're in. The only thing that satisfies just barely is the dopamine hits that the computer and the social medias give. And what's really crazy, there was a kid that even said when it was shown a beautiful sunset, oh yeah, it's kind of like what I saw on whatever the game was. And what's so disturbing about that is now the virtual world, the world twice, 3 times removed from reality, is the standard of reality. And Jay, I know there's what is the book or the article? Shoot, help me out here.
Simulacrum and Simulation.
Yes, thank you.
The chapter in Baudrillard's book.
Yes, talks about this too. That's a problem. That's really concerning. And therefore, is Tristan, like you said, those are derivatives of real existence. And that's why, well, surprise, surprise, that all these youngsters, they can't have real relationships. They fall into these kinds of traps, these black pill traps, and conspiracy thinking and stuff like, well, how does that happen? It's an abnormality. It's a psychological and anthropomorphic anomaly, an abnormality that occurs exactly from this.
Yeah, it's so sad when you hear somebody, they'll tell you a story and it's like something beautiful that happened in their life, and then they'll say it was like a movie. It's like there's nothing more. It sounds like crushing to hear, you know. Oh, it's like your life is so much better than any movie. You know, your life, like what you actually have here, is way more real, way more important, way more beautiful than any Hollywood movie. You know, just a shout out to the stream that Jay did with David Patrick Harry on Church of the Eternal Logos on the problem of circularity. Right, because I think we're going to probably end up getting into that issue as well. It's like when you get to the root of people's worldviews and you start comparing worldviews, having some basic knowledge about the history of thought, as Father Deacon Ananias just mentioned. Jay's stream with David Patrick Harry on the problem of circularity was a fantastic breakdown of kind of the history of philosophy. I think you guys did a really good job on that. It looked like you wanted to jump in with something, Jay.
Well, on the one hand, it does, I think, speak to an empty culture that everything's compared to a movie. But at the same time, I think that it's kind of natural because we liken our lives to stories, because stories are fundamental to, you know, how humans process things. Factual, rational calculation and tabulation and explanation is very limited, and it's actually not really the classic, you know, human style of storytelling. So usually humans give their lives a meaning through stories, and that's because science is limited. Science can't give you that. It can really only give you the is what is and not what ought to be. And stories kind of implicitly include an ought, how things ought to be. So stories are actually way more powerful and fundamental to human beings. And I think in earlier days, people would have referenced things like literary works, like Shakespeare. They would have referenced I don't know, C.S. Lewis or Tolkien or something like that. And I think you can redeem stories, and films themselves would be excellent means for these archetypal principles. If people, and I'm all of this just to say that the next thing I'm gonna do is cover the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, because nobody's done a Christian dystopia that I can think of. There's like a few, kind of like Book of Eli is kind of a Christian dystopia movie, but I'm on the second book now of the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's a really good critique of nihilism. And although I haven't read the third book, I read a whole philosophical and epistemologist essay analyzing the third installment, Hideous Strength, which I would like to bring up because it's relevant to what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, which is how we interpret things within our paradigm. And it's applicable to the overly conspiratorial thinking. And being somebody who deals with conspiracy theories regularly and who has been in different phases of conspiracy theorizing, I think I can speak to this, because there are extremes that people can adopt, whether it's the black pill narrative or whether it's the everything is part of the Illuminati, Freemasonic conspiracy. I mean, these are all kind of ridiculous extremes that are out there that people can really fall into. And it'd be like, a gamer who lives his life through video games. Shocking. He accepts the simulation theory hypothesis, right? All of these tech geeks and nerds who live their lives on the internet through video games, and then they adopt a narrative that fits something that they've already kind of immersed themselves in without even knowing it. So they're susceptible then to a sort of a Gnostic, neo-Gnostic paradigm. They don't even know that, by just accepting the fact that, oh, well, Elon Musk and a bunch of people on the internet, or so-called internet intellectuals are saying that the simulation theory is explains so much, bro. And that narrative has been promoted for 3 or 4 years now, heavily from the top. It's just like the people that fall into the neo-pagan zeitgeist and spirit that's being sort of pumped out there now. All of these are kind of traps, but if we understand how worldviews work, it'll help us not to fall into those traps.
Yeah, well said. Well said. The I mean, you're talking about like how narrative, how story, symbolism, this really does kind of form and structure our minds and then our behaviors ultimately, right? So, film, children being exposed to cartoons at such a young age, the way that the characters interact with the world, the way that the characters, parents treat them, in the Disney movies are like, the notoriously just about a traumatized child whose parents either die or, abuse them in some way, which then leads them to this kind of, black pill, and then they get pulled out of their despair by usually some sort of a sorcerer or a witch that will, make a deal with them and then give them some sort of magical powers that they can then, seduce somebody with or get worldly power and fame and this stuff. So it's like these narratives, these are some of the most important narratives to children. They don't have much else other than pop culture, I guess is what I'm getting at in a long-winded way. And then I think a lot of us, we start to come out of this. And I remember, years ago, I was like a young guy and really just not fed up with all the nonsense, fed up with the lies. You start to kind of realize that certain things you've been fed are nonsense, essentially. And eventually, you get to a place of you're hypercritical of culture. Right? You understand that there are all these things wrong with the culture. You understand that there are all these lies you're being told. You understand that you're being programmed in a certain way. And you start lashing out at it. But I think without like a really a worldview to combat that, other than just pure, well, I'm against this, right? I'm against the degeneracy. I'm against the liberals. I'm against you sexualizing children and all these things that, obviously we should be opposing, all these things that are objectively, bad and wrong. But I remember being in a place where started getting into libertarian stuff, and maybe we'll fight this by getting Ron Paul elected. If Ron Paul can just get in 2008.
Did you go to confession for that, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like there is no grounded worldview, right? And it was basically just rage at the world. And I think many of us have been there. Actually, this Zoom meeting, my boomer tech skills blew it. Let's get in the other Zoom. I just sent you guys a link in Skype. Let's jump in that. We can finish this thought. Apologies to the audience here. No, not that one. All right. New Zoom meeting. Sorry, guys. I thought I had Zoom Pro, but I have not used Zoom in a long time. Pulling this back up. So yeah. Anyways, you get this place where you see that there are problems in the world. You start to kind of get a little bit black-pilled. How do I hide there you go, hide self-view. You start to kind of get a little bit black-pilled even, and without any real solutions or any way to actually combat it, then where do you even go? And I think that spot, that black pill, and that I know what's going on in the world is bad, right? A lot of people get there, but their time will be spent just eating conspiracy candy, right? Just being a glutton for, oops. Oh,
Daddy.
There we go. All right, now you guys can hear me. So anyways, when you get to that spot of the black pill, right? And you're consuming, you hate the world, right? Even, maybe some of the wrong things in the world you've identified, but you start to get maybe embittered, and you get into this kind of dark place. I think a lot of us can relate to that. But then what do you do, right? If you don't have any way to combat this, all you're doing is just lashing out and naming all the bad things in the world. And I think what we see in a lot of the online circles are just that. A lot of people who've recognized the bad things in the world. Okay, where do you go from there? What is good? What's the standard for good? What's the standard for a good culture? And how do we even bring that about? Becomes a question I think a lot of us reach, and then are just left in the dark, especially in the conspiracy world. Oops, let me see. All right.
Yeah, Jay, I like what you had to say too. That I think it's a combination of, and we can talk about this further, a combination of appropriate worldview because that'll condition the way that you think about these things. But we're incarnational in our theology and ideas. So it's not just about having a worldview, but being able to actually put this into practice. That's where the communal, and then also, I think just it is important to learn kind of right thinking. I teach logic, and if you put all these kind together, that these are kind of ways to inoculate yourself against the bad thinking and traps and black pills and conspiratorial thinking that's actually erroneous and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you get to this place of, look, you got these Masonic conspiracies, or you got these big events, they're inside jobs. You got fake left-right dialectic. People who realize these things and recognize some of the problems in the world that are valid critiques of what's going on in the world. But okay, well then what should we do about it? What's the standard for good, right? I think even a lot of people in the Protestant world, you see people in Protestant worldview conspiracy circles talking about how everyone's satanic, everybody's a secret this and that. But you ask them, well, what's the standard for good, and by what standard are you judging these people? And give an example. You ask for examples of hey, what's a good Name a good culture, name a good person even. And a lot of people will be completely taken aside. Like they're like, what? You want me to name like one good person? You're like, you're opening the door for them. At least you could say Christ. But very often they won't even name Christ or so yeah. Anyways, what is the standard for good? I think becomes the major question here, and a lot of people haven't even gotten there in their thinking, which is very strange.
Yeah, I think that everybody goes through kind of phases in their process, and we might enter into questions about the fundamental nature of reality and meaning and right and wrong through different avenues. But everybody's going to kind of be shook, I guess, in different ways. And so there is a process that I think everybody goes through when you, let's take the conspiratorial element for a second, when you start to realize that, you know, maybe the mainstream media doesn't tell me the truth. Maybe the monetary policy of the United States, the Federal Reserve are based on lies. Maybe, and you get going sort of further and further. And because you've gotten a little bit of truth in these different domains with economics or mass media lying, and you start to go further, I think people might think, oh, well, now that I've got some truth, I've got it all figured out. And then you kind of have this mistake that you make where you think that now anything sort of conspiratorial, because I've been lied about these things, I've been lied to about everything, and everything is a lie. And then it takes you down this path where you start to question everything, which isn't necessarily bad. It might depend on why you're questioning everything. So a person could conceivably have bad motives for questioning everything. But let's say your motives are pure and you want to know the truth. You could still be going down a dead end or going into something that's a trap or a false line of thinking, because the motivation of a lot of conspiracy analyzers, let's people that take the conspiracy pill, or what I think Hesher on Boiler Room a long time ago called a conspiracy candy, because it's like these sort of conspiracy traps are laid out for you on the way, which may or may not contain truth or degrees of truth or elements of truth. And then you go down this rabbit hole, and now you start to question everything. But the problem is that now it's getting into a Gnostic worldview, because Gnosticism is the idea that not only have you been lied to on a social political level, you're being lied to on a fundamental level of reality. And you see all the world religions are part of this process of lying and deceiving you. And you see everything was part of a grand narrative deception. And then this actually feeds people into Freemasonry or secret societies, because secret societies actually have that narrative of history. You see, we've been telling you all along that you were lied to. Come join this brotherhood, because, for example, if you read Manly P. Hall's books, which Jamie and I were recently covering, his whole lie, it's a con game. It's really just a bait and switch. He's like, you see, Masons have controlled all the world religions at all times, and we had a secret inner caste that was controlling things. And now that you've discovered this, you are part of that inner elect. Come join the Freemasonic secret society, and then you'll get the real secrets about how the world really works. And so, in other words, the conspiratorial 100 miles an hour rabbit hole that you go down ends at becoming a Freemason and a Gnostic, and you end up like somebody like Marty Leeds, or just in total delusion, just saying crazy stuff. I'm using him as a test case example. I don't hate him or anything like that. I'm just saying that he's an example of somebody who goes down this rabbit hole. You see, the Masons, they did this, they controlled this, they caused this, they did this. Everything's Freemasonry, bro. And then you're at this weird grand narrative that you've explained everything according to Freemasonry, supposedly. But now you start to think, I guess the Freemasons really know what's going on, because they actually run everything. So maybe I should join the Freemasonic Lodge and learn the inner secrets. And that was all a stupid trap to lead you into some dumb cult that's a bunch of con men.
Isn't it interesting that, Masonry is funding these revolutions to overthrow, destroy king and altar, to throne an altar rather, right? And you start to look at the history of Masonry, and it's this culture of critique and destruction of order, right? So that they can then, basically rearrange man in this utopian vision. And man, yeah, I'm so glad you brought up Manly P. Hole. We read him like in 2000, 9 or so, I remember getting, this Secret Teachings of All Ages book, and you start going through it, and every single chapter is exactly what Jay just described, right? It's like, Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle and then all the ancient philosophers, they were all part of this secret club. And then you get to the end of the book and he's telling you that, Christianity as well was basically a Masonic conspiracy. They tell you that Zoroastrianism was also Masonic, and that there's even a page with like Sir Francis Bacon, right? So it's got a picture of Shakespeare, and I'm not saying like, I don't know, maybe there's truth to it, but it's like, I don't care either way. It's got a picture of Shakespeare, and then it's got a clear piece of paper, like a wax thin piece of paper with the outline of Francis Bacon. It's like, look, we really are Shakespeare. We really are this, and that we're all the greatest literature comes from us. Everything is just Masonry, and we're all just initiating you, and all of the universe, according to this like delusional philosophy, the whole universe is this giant machine for initiation into the mysteries of our cult. And if you just join us and come do our stupid play dress up with us, and then you'll have all the power and you'll have all the secrets. And I think a lot of people that get into the conspiracy stuff, and it's like, that's the exact progression. They start studying the secret societies and stuff, and they basically get initiated into their worldview.
Yeah, that's what Michael Hoffman said the whole goal of it was. I mean, my first encounter with this idea of revelation of the method was Hoffman's 2001 or 2 book, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. And his point there was correct, that basically saying if there's not like a foundation or a Christian worldview that you have, going down the rabbit hole and exposing the conspirators with nothing to combat that with is a futile effort, and it's just going to lead you into delusion and chaos. Now, in Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike spends hundreds of pages, almost 1,000 pages, talking about how all the ancient Gnostic religions, Zoroastrian sects, etc., are all really just teaching Masonry. And he spends the whole book telling you how there's no dogmas, and the Mason doesn't submit to dogma. What's the title of his stupid book? Morals and Dogma. That's the dogmas that he's telling you have to accept, as he tells you that the real, true, free man does not accept dogmas. And this is called doublethink. This is called con artistry. This is called a scam. It's called a contradiction. Furthermore, how would I be here refuting and talking about how stupid this is for all these years if I'm a secret Freemason, right? There's all these idiots on the internet that say that I'm secretly a Freemason. So I ignore all of the content that I've done for years, calling this out as a dumb cult, as a scam, as a Gnostic thing, all the reputations I've done of Gnosticism, debates with Gnostics, boomer Gnostics, public debates. But no, secretly, I'm an esoteric Gnostic trying to get people into.
Because that's the code.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, my book has multiple critiques of Freemasonic philosophy in it.
It's this thinking of like, well, I cracked the code, right? I have the secret decoder ring. Right? I've heard you use that, the decoder ring, the boomer decoder ring or whatever. You find you have the magic kaleidoscope, and if you look through it, then you're going to see everything as it truly is, right? It's really coming from a place of extreme. We can so easily fall into this extreme
pride.
Yeah, exactly. It's pride.
Well, remember when Marty Leeds was debating Wyckoff, and Wyckoff's like, I went through all these Masonic rites, and then he's like, were you a Mason? And Marty Leeds is like, no, but I know the philosophy better than you. It's like, you weren't even a Mason. How are you're gonna tell the guy who used to be, a committed Mason what the philosophy was? It's just kind of ridiculous.
Well, going back to like the historical aspect of this is really interesting too. How Masonry kind of really flourished, and these secret societies started coming about around like the Enlightenment, right? You have this kind of like post-Enlightenment. I guess the Renaissance led to this as well, but Masonry hijacks. They even they have their Masonic Bible, right? And Masonry and these secret societies, they will take Christian imagery and invert it and use this in in a more Gnostic way, or in a very openly sinister way. And it's fascinating when you see like a lot of the revolutionaries. James H. Billington talks about this. A lot of the revolutionaries really venerated the Protestant reformers, and in many ways, the Protestant Reformation kind of atomized the Western man's thought, and like this idea of the autonomous man figuring out the true meaning of Scripture, the true nature of Christ, the true nature of God through his own just private revelation that comes to him because he's super special. That idea, I don't know. You can see what I'm getting at. Kind of Protestantism really does tie in really nicely, which seems very, it'd be obvious why Masonry would push for.
Well, what both of those systems have in common, and I'll let Father Deacon speak, is the starting point of the systems is the individual human mind. So there's not a deference to a collective body of teaching of the church. There's not a deference to authorities, be they historical, be they ecclesiastical, be they whatever. There is a notion of my whole system is going to begin with my own reasoning process. And man is no longer conceived of in a unique way as a person in the West. Man is reduced to a body-soul duality. And so the highest faculty in man is not the heart or the nous, it's now the reasoning faculty. So by making the reasoning faculty the ultimate highest faculty in man, what expresses man par excellence, now the best man is the best reasoner. And so this then exalts reason as a new kind of God or deity. And that's why Descartes, it kind of kicks off. If any philosophy program in the secular university will go from the ancient world, maybe a little bit of Augustine and Plato, then they'll jump to Descartes. Then they'll jump to Descartes. Why? Because Descartes is the beginning of the modern era to shift. It's a Copernican shift in the way that you go about doing philosophy, not metaphysics, the external world, ancient authorities, the chain of being. Now it shifts to the individual man's mind. And then it goes to Descartes and Hume from there. And everything is trapped. You're trapped in the human mind with empiricism or idealism. So it doesn't matter whether it's rationalism or empiricism. They both have their origin at this key modern figure of Descartes and the Cartesian revolution. And that is, as you said, totally connected. Many people, many scholars and historians have made the connection between this and the Reformation, that these ideas are very closely associated, that the idea of the individual mind determining reality and the idea of the individual mind looking and determining what Scripture is, what the church is, what theology is, it all begins there. And it's a false either or. Again, based on bad theology, based on false assumptions that, as St. Justin Popovich says, we're already in papism, right? Papism is the original, he says, humanism. Protestantism is just an anti-papal version of humanism.
Yeah, Descartes actually, he defines man as mind. And I would even be so bold as to argue that all this, even the Skittles and trans stuff can be linked to Descartes. I mean, think about it. If you're just mind, then you are whatever you think you are.
Yeah, I think I'm a black lesbian, therefore I am.
Right, yeah. The Cartesian trans argument.
But in your case, Tristan, the biology also matches up, so it's not just an internal state.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're working on that. I mean, the hormone blockers, they're really starting to kick in. So yeah.
But yeah, Jay's right. This kind of, and then that ties into the Reformation too. The seeds are back in papism too, when you already have a type of autonomous epistemology. I can do it without you, God. So Jay and I've talked about this with Aquinas. Aquinas ultimately would say, no, you can't know if there wasn't a God. But I can justify from my starting points, even atheistic or an empiricist starting point or whatever starting point, he just grants that, oh, sure, all these people can know and have justifications for knowing in these different reasoning processes without appealing to the actual necessary conditions for the possibility of that, i.e. God. So it just happens for Aquinas that, oh, you find out at the end, oh, God exists. But my project's legitimized apart from God. I can do it on my own. And then I'll just discover, whoa, wow, God exists. Descartes just takes that a step further. Remember, I was saying that it's like each philosopher just takes the seeds that what the predecessor had planted, and they just take it a step further. Oh yeah, well, if you say that, then actually it's this. And Descartes actually conceives of, I can know whether God exists or not in a logical sense. So he takes the autonomy, the pretended autonomy, and that autonomous epistemological project even farther. So is it any surprise then that going into, once this kind of radical autonomous project starts, and once you have this brought into the theological sphere, right, that, well, I'm the measure of all, of course I don't need the corporate body, I don't need any normative authority. I am the normative authority for determining doctrinal matters. And then you get, the humanism within Protestantism. I think, Jay, that's what you're pointing out, right?
Right. So the idea, just again, is the human, I mean, you could use humanism in both senses of the academic movement of the time to go back to the original sources, which included both Catholic and Protestant academics. Calvin was a humanist.
Luther.
Well, yeah, to a degree. Erasmus was the most famous humanist of that time. And really, they just wanted to go back to the original sources to kind of cut away some of the Roman Catholic incrustations, I guess you could say, that sort of developed in the Latin Franco-Papal Church, which in itself is not necessarily wrong, but also in the sense of humanism, in the sense of the undue exaltation of the human mind, the human person, or the human being from the Hellenic tradition. Man is the measure of all things. This kind of, in that sense, both senses of humanism existed, and both of them were connected to the Reformation and the Enlightenment. Both of them, again, have a really close association, actually, and many people have called attention to this.
It's like the Pope is the measure of all things to the individual person. Reading scripture is the measure of all things and can determine, what the church is, who God is, the nature of God. And then it becomes, well, why do we need God at all? Like, man is just all there is. It's just man figuring out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the Enlightenment philosophers did in their apologetic, was eventually just say, actually, we don't need. So that with the natural theology presuppositions, there's not really a need for the deity of natural theology, and eventually he just gets discarded, right? By the time of Voltaire, by the time of the other atheists after Hume, the point is just simply that if God is the placeholder at the end of a syllogism, then God isn't actually God, and he's not necessary. Mm-hmm. So that's again why natural theology doesn't work, why all those classical arguments don't convince many people anymore, maybe some people, but there's a direct connection between the anthropology and the natural theology. And if either one of those isn't true, then the other one isn't true. So we need a better answer, a better approach to these things that are really just Western dialectical problems. Why? On the basis of the assumption of Hellenic problems. So that it's the return of paganism. The Enlightenment is the return of paganism, according to Peter Gay, the famous history of ideas guy. Mm-hmm. And so why is it paganism? And it's because it's a resurrection of the values and the ethos of the Hellenic world, which again says man is the measure of all things. What's the highest faculty in man according to the Greek philosophers? Reasoning.
Yep. So yeah, no doubt that this goes into back to these kinds of ideas that there's a hidden world, but through your mind, you can actually decipher the code. You can see reality as it really is. Now, what's really interesting is that I think that Blaise Pascal had a critique of this, because he's in the middle of like rationalism, right? And he has some great critiques of his contemporary Descartes as well, where one line's really hilarious. He's like, you don't even care about God. Like, he professes he's a believer. He's a believer. And Pascal points out, you just use God. You used him literally in like the third meditation and throw him out. And then you never talk about him at all. There's no place, there's no room for God. But Pascal had this really amazing, I think it's a great critique of kind of Gnosticism or centered autonomous epistemology. He says what one man couldn't get, a few highly educated people to believe and understand. No, I think he says what Socrates couldn't get a few highly educated men to understand and believe. One man, by the power of just a few words, got thousands and thousands to understand and believe. And that, what a great refutation of just an overturning of the world's ways. And you see this too, that God confounds the wise. The path to salvation in true gnosis is not your mind. It's not through the powers of your intellect, but just the opposite, through humility, through suffering, through the crucifixion. I also was thinking too, where you see this kind of Gnosticism too, like we'll decipher the secret codes. The 60s revolution too. Don't you see this? Think about the phenomenon that came up with the Joseph Smith magic glasses would be LSD or something like that. But wasn't there like a whole thing that like the Beatles are putting secret messages, and I don't just mean Manson thinking this, but it was a huge phenomenon in the 60s that there were secret messages in the music, especially with the Beatles. And if you were wise enough, if you could get the code and crack it, you'd see what the Beatles and
like backward masking and stuff with like the Led Zeppelin album.
You'd understand what Paul is the Walrus really means.
So I mean, I love how you contrast that with kind of the Orthodox theory of knowledge, where like in Saint Justin Popovich's chapter on the theory, the Orthodox theory of knowledge in Saint Isaac the Syrian, he talks about how knowledge doesn't come through, like real gnosis is not just like this mental affirmation. It's not even just, this secret sauce that's given to you from the spirit world because you're super special, or you crack the code and you hit the cheat code. No, the knowledge actually comes through a purified heart, a purified noose, not like a noose that you hang yourself with like Judas, but your noose, your Nous, the heart, the eye of the soul, the eye of the heart. And that's how we
I want to show you
knowledge.
something crazy. Galileo, the two new sciences. Now, there's this crazy picture in here, and I'm just thinking about what you were saying, tying in. So I don't know if you can see this very well.
I'm waiting for it to
But that's
focus.
Galileo. What do you think that tree is right there?
Tree of knowledge.
The tree of knowledge.
Well, Newton
And
too,
then
wasn't Newton? Newton's whole thing came from a similar allegory.
And then it says non solus, not alone, or something like that. And it's the new sciences. And so here you have really interesting. It's not the tree of life. It's the tree of knowledge. He's going that, but he's creating a new way. All of this is just, I brought him up. We always think about the philosophers and stuff like that. But Galileo really typifies this kind of movement as well. And then I'm doing something new. I'm creating a new path to salvation, a new man, a new Atlantis, Francis Bacon, right? In man's image.
Yeah, if you
With the
look
help
at,
of the devil, dude. I'm surprised the snake isn't there, like telling him, you see?
well, so in Umberto Eco's famous novel, Name of the Rose, right, it takes place in medieval I think a Franciscan monastery, the whole series of events, kind of a murder mystery that you think throughout the novel has to do with the esoteric and the demonic. And the character who's the main character, if you watch the movie's not very good, but Sean Connery plays the main character, he's kind of a monk who's also a detective, but he's based on Bacon, right? So he's based on this idea of the new science, the new methodology being basically empiricism.
Mhm.
So now we're going to debunk the supernatural with the empirical, and that's exactly why Echo chose, Bacon. I think it's not Francis Bacon, it's Roger Bacon, I think was the guy I'm thinking of, but he was also, I think, going from memory, it's been many years since I looked at this, but he was a medieval philosopher who kind of prepared the way for this type of approach in terms of so Roger Bacon was a 13th century empiricist, right? So he came out of that was during when Aristotle was beginning to get popular in the West again with the translation of new writings and works of Aristotle. So Roger Bacon becomes the archetypal preeminent early empiricist, right? Before even Francis Bacon or the New Organon or anything like that. And so Roger Bacon is this basically medieval debunking Sherlock Holmes type of character who debunks all of the supernatural that was going on in the monastery, and it ends up being this big ritual. I'm not gonna this. It's a really good novel ultimately, but it ends up being postmodern, I guess is the best way to put it. So it goes from this empiricist ethos that's going on throughout the novel, and then you realize that actually Echo is a postmodernist / probably some kind of occultist himself.
So, Jay, I've heard you so many times do great critique on the Protestant worldview and how Protestantism. We're not trying to like bash on Protestants or anything too. Like we have like a lot of friends who love that are Protestants, but ultimately we think that that there are issues. There are major issues, and it's clearly lacking. But how does Protestantism actually lead to nominalism and ultimately the postmodernism? Can you go ahead and give a quick breakdown? I know you've done this many times, but I think the audience would appreciate a little bridge here.
Well, coming out of the Middle Ages, there was a lot of debates over the status of universals, and they split into two categories, the nominalists and the realists. And the realists were very much Platonists. They thought that Plato kind of had it all right, and that universals have a real ontological existence. The nominalists, embodied in figures like William of Ockham, were much more grounded empiricists, we might say, who didn't necessarily deny any notion of essences or substances, but they didn't think that universals had a real existence. So they had a much more limited, quiet approach to these questions, and they disagreed amongst themselves. Ockham, I think, was one of the first to say that universals might just be verbal symbols, token symbols, are not really existing things. So it's kind of it's the opposite extreme of the Platonic view. And going from memory here, I think like Wycliffe was a proto-Protestant who had an extreme Platonic realist view. Some Calvinists have had extreme Platonic realist views. And then the opposite extreme is the nominalists, and that would be people like Gabriel Biel, who influenced Luther. So Luther ends up influenced by the opposite of these Platonic Calvinist people in terms of nominalism, which is weird because Luther seems to have also had esoteric Rosicrucian influences as well. So, I mean, in Luther contradicts himself too. So let's not act like everybody has one consistent worldview throughout their life or whatever. But so whatever the various influences on Luther are, according to the famous book by Heiko Obermann, Harvest of Medieval Theology, Luther was very influenced by nominalists. And ultimately this kind of, I would say, wins out in the Reformation. I don't think that most of the Protestant tradition at all ends up in something like Platonism. Every now and then, like I said, you might get a Calvinist who's very Platonic, like Stephen Charnock or some of these people, but they really have minimal influence. And ultimately, the desacralizing approach of Protestantism, the iconoclastic approach of Protestantism, clearly ends up divesting sacraments, symbols, religious events as having a supernatural significance. And so they become very materialized, they become demythologized, they become desacralized. So that's clearly the heritage that the Protestant evangelical world took as a whole, even though, again, yes, you can find some outliers. Father Deacon and I were laughing about a certain radical Platonic idealist guy who pops up every now and then to kind of harass Father Deacon. So every now and then you can find an outlier in the Protestant world who's some kind of weird Platonic idealist, but most of the time it ends up being people who are going in the other direction towards nominalism and empiricism. And the problem with that approach is not, again, to deny the importance of empirical sense data or science or any of these things, but the problem is that it's going to an opposite extreme. Both the Aristotelian extreme of empiricism and nominalism and the Platonic extreme of only emphasizing the transcendent as real, the denial of the here and the now, these are dialectical extremes. And the incarnation is a rejection of both of these extremes. On the one hand, it's an affirmation of the goodness of the created order and reality in the here and the now. It's not bad. Jesus took on human nature, deifies it, matter's not bad. And at the same time, there's also a higher realm, the transcendent, God, the uncreated. And so the problem that plagues philosophy, Reformation, Roman Catholicism, Western philosophers is dialectics, thinking in these extreme either ors. It's either the one or the many. It's either grace or free will. It's either the Bible or tradition, right? It's either predestination or free will. And you'll see that the Reformation tradition especially is always explained in these dialectics. Oh, we believe in grace over free will. We believe in the Bible over the tradition. And it's just sort of premised on all of these false either or dialectics. And for the Orthodox position, it's not like Jesus is either God or man. He's God and man. It's not like there's grace or free will. There's a synergy. It's not like there's church or state. There's supposed to be a symphonia, you see.
Why go to the saints when you can just go to Jesus?
Yeah, right. Again, all of these false dialectics, right? Either or. Why do I need Mary when I can pray to God myself? Right. So the whole thing is premised on either ors. And you can even look at the choice between, you going to choose Aristotle or you going to choose Plato, bro? It's either or. Why would, as a Christian, we think that I have to choose some pagan Hellenic schema to box my Christianity into? Why, as a Christian, why can't I do as Maximus or John Damascus do and pull from different philosophers the good points, the good arguments, without adopting their metaphysic as a whole or their system as a whole? I mean, clearly that should be the Christian approach. But both Protestantism and the Roman Catholic system suffer from, again, a lot of these either ors and these extremes because, and I'll close with this point, just think about the Roman Catholic medieval scholastic approach, right? It's premised on an autonomous reasoning process by which I will delineate all these attributes and things about God apart from divine revelation based on supposedly natural theology without the Trinity somehow, as if I know God in some other mode than triad, in some absolute divine simplicity mode. So somehow that's the assumption there, by the way. But even if it did, that wouldn't be the biblical God. God is not a science experiment that you list the properties of, right? It's a being that you have to encounter in a relational way, right? To have knowledge of in the truest sense, not just in a descriptive sense. Now you can do descriptive theology, but what happens in the West is that scholasticism makes everything into a science. Even theology is kind of cashed out as a science, even though I think it's the highest sciences and it's above natural science. It's still a science in the sense of the same way that you empirically investigate all the other sciences, right? And that's just not what theology is. It's not a empirical science according to, Aquinas and these people, right? For us, for the Orthodox, it's not. And then what does the Reformation do? Initially, it has a problem with all of this, right? It has a problem with natural theology in the Thomistic sense. It has a problem with autonomous thinking, right? Especially if it's Calvin. So the Reformation is a reaction to this. And within one generation, what does the Reformation do? immediately into scholasticism, Reformed scholastics. They immediately become scholastics. So it didn't do anything to have the counter reaction to the existing rationalist system by setting up another anti-rationalist system within one generation that becomes another rationalist system, aka Protestant scholasticism. This is a very well-known thing too. I'm not speculating. Everybody knows. You can read people like Francis Turretin is the most famous. There's all the Lutheran scholastics after Luther that came along. So you see, the point is that the problem persists here, that it's not a problem of reasoning and the schoolmen. That's not really what the problem is. It's something else.
Yeah, well said. Let's my bad. We got to switch the Zoom meeting one more time. This will be the last. We'll do one more segment here if you guys can stick around. And yeah, so let's jump into that other Zoom. All right, everybody who's watching, y'all watching on where we at? We're on Rockfin. We're on YouTube. What's up, all you guys? Hey, shout out to the sponsors. You guys make sure to hit up chalk.com, CHOQ.com, CHOQ.com. Get yourself some of that chalk, highest quality adaptogens, and you can. I'm going to end this last meeting. Chalk.com, CHOQ.com, highest quality natural adaptogens to get your hormones straight, to get your body functioning as it should. I'm a huge fan of the Chalk Daily. There it is right there. Shout out to Chalk. The Daily's got the purified shilajit. It's got that mucuna extract to sensitize those dopamine receptors. The Tongkat extract is fantastic as well. Huge fan of that Tongkat extract. Huge fan of the shilajit, the purified shilajit extract. Get yourselves some of that. CHOQ at chalk.com, CHOQ.com. The link is in the description of the videos, and you can get 50% off. That's 50% off if you use the code. If you use the code BIG50. That is the code BIG50 for 50% off everything that's store-wide at chalk.com, CHOQ.com. So back here with Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, as well as Jay Dyer, waiting for Jay to jump back in here. But there we go. So yeah, going back to St. Eustine Popovich's very poignant argument against Protestantism and papism is he says that papism is humanism, right? One man being the judge of God, of what doctrine is, what truth is ultimately. Protestantism making every man his own pope, right? And then the autonomous projects of philosophy, as Father Deacon Ananias is spoken of, basically made man and his mind God itself, right? Your mind is God. And, tying this back into the, like the conspiracy culture, right? You start to explore all these things. You go down the rabbit hole or whatever you want to call it. You get red pilled. You start questioning everything, right? And where do you end? Where does it end? Does it end at, well, are we all just in a simulation? Are we just like floating in a pool and, having false images given to us by some demiurge? What is it? A lot of Protestants, they'll critique the world and they'll look at the world and they say, they're building the Antichrist system. They're building the Antichrist system, right? But then you ask them, do they believe that the scriptures are true? And many of them will tell you, yeah, some parts of them are true and some are not. Like from the Protestant worldview, how do you know what scripture even is, right? So like divorcing yourself from tradition and then trying to describe scripture as some, autonomous thing that just speaks directly to your autonomous mind and you're getting the secrets of the universe through scriptures. This leads to absurdity, and it leads to pure relativism, unfortunately. And that black pill relativist, everything is fake except me, of course, right? Everything in the world is fake. Everyone's a shill. Everything's bad. But then, of course, there's this assumption that, like, well, I'm good, obviously, because I can judge all this stuff, right? You become in your own mind like the judge of everything, including Scripture, and which I think is obviously dangerous in so many ways. Father Deacon, you look like you might have wanted to jump in there.
It's not just an epistemological issue. It's an issue of authority in law, a normative authority. And for some reason, I can't get Protestants to kind of understand this. It might be because they're sitting there arguing with the papists the whole time. And the papists are saying, well, without the teaching magisterium, you can't know anything, right? Like you have to have this to interpret. And then, of course, the Protestant responds back, well, then don't I need an infallible interpreter of the infallible interpreter? So both those camps are missing the point. It's not even about like, am I, autonomous epistemologically? So they're in that argument. It's one about authority. So, for example, well, a book can't be an authority, and Protestants can't get this. And this comes to what's called the right of private judgment. Ultimately, what it's reducing to is not just like, I can know stuff, but I am the authority, right? They just have no concept of what normative authority is. And they've made themselves the normative authority. Now, they think a book can be authority apart from a body being endowed with that power, but that's absolutely absurd. And when I say like an authority, like in a legal sense, because this is primarily where we get a notion of like what could be normatively binding, is that would it make any sense at all to say the Constitution without any body or group of people endowed with the power to enforce something as law could be an authority? This is what Protestants are saying. The Bible is the final authority apart from any man.
And how do you know you have the proper interpretation of the Bible? Oh, well, because I feel I do. That's really what it comes down to. It's always like, yeah, I feel I do. I get a
well, it'll come back to arguments that like, well, because my argument's better. But I still think that misses the whole point that you have rejected a normative authority. The church, and Jay and I have always talked about this too. You look nothing like the church. The church excommunicates throughout history, right? They have the power to bind legal in like in a legal sense, right? You can't just say that, look, the book's the authority and we all follow, that's the law and we follow it and that's the doctrine. Because as you point out, Tristan, well, what happens when you have two Protestants? And what's really interesting, it reminds me of exactly the sort of kind of secularism that's going on in ethics, right? So in ethics, they were like trying to get out of these problems of, well, what if this person says this on this and that? And the other person says just the contrary. So what do? They create something called the idealized observer. Well, the idealized, perfectly rational person, whatever decision he would make, let's go after that. And then the critic rightly brings up, well, is it theoretically or a priori possible that two idealized, perfectly rational people could disagree on an issue? How is it settled? This is exactly what the Protestants doing. They're creating an idealized observer, right? That could be perfectly rational and understand the scripture. So that's what is actually true and how I know it. I try to achieve this idealized perfect rationality too. But the problem is what happens when you have two of those idealized, perfectly rational interpreters of scripture or an issue of doctrine disagree with each other. What does Luther say? It's your conscience that overrides any authority. It's the right of private judgment. So it's more of an issue to do with where do you get your authority? Where is the authority than just even an epistemic issue? Protestants have no way of dealing with that. And it's another thing that ties exactly into what's going on in ethics and epistemology with relativism too. There is a denial of authority. Each person becomes the measure and standard. In other words, and I was just reading this to my ethics class, with subjectivism, they call the subject, the individual person, morally infallible. So notice the religious parallel there. You're taking the magisterium or a council and you're making it the individual. I'm morally infallible, or my group of people, I could be a cultural relativist, are where the normative authority. But all of this, as Jay pointed out, comes from a kind of nominalism and rejection of any kind of realism, that there is actually kind of any real authority out there. So all of this then has to be reduced, even in ethics. If objectivism's false, then it only leaves subjectivism, cultural relativism, or nihilism. It exactly parallels what's going on in moral philosophy, is what you see, what's going on with Protestantism and the world writ large right now.
Well, and these internet subcultures that we're talking about, so it's all the same manifestation there too.
Yep. So that's why, like I said, coming back full circle to what we originally began with, why it's so important to study the history of ideas, the history of thought, is that, is it just coincidental that you see this happening in Protestantism in the contemporary world, in postmodern online, and these various things? No, it has a single source ideologically in history.
I would like to add too, something that we talked about before the stream started, was one of the insights that postmodern philosophers have is that with the Enlightenment, you didn't get the removal of authorities. You didn't get the breakdown of authorities. What you got was a breakdown of existing authority and the replacement with new authorities. And so, Foucault has that point that he makes about how the vestments of the new priest class are now like lab coats. And so you just got another class of people who are the shepherds. In the Middle Ages, it was the priests, and now it's the science man, right? Scientism is the new religion. And in that way, the postmodern philosophers are actually very insightful. And this is where you would get to things like even the Frankfurt School being influenced by Nietzscheanism and postmodernism eventually, to where their notion of breaking down the existing system and structure through critique, it becomes a never-ending process, the critique of the critique of the critique of the critique.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this exemplified even in internet culture without these people even knowing this, right? Like, for example, you get right-wingers that will endlessly troll and try to destroy, thinking that they're furthering their cause or whatever, when in actual fact, they're just doing a postmodern exercise that NATO has weaponized. NATO has in its warfare document the usage of nihilism for a psychological warfare process to destabilize and just basically cause internet chaos, to disrupt any kind of organizations, groups, entities, or discussions that might stumble upon truth, right? So this is a strategy that you can just interject chaos. That's actually so they talk about trolling as a psychological warfare tactic. And what's funny to me is just that idiot right-wingers don't even realize that they're doing this very process of postmodern destruction as they think they're furthering their cause of bringing down the existing system, when they're not. They're not doing anything but hurting their own cause.
Yeah. Well, it's like you have the Frankfurt School critical theorists, but you have now the Frankfurt School conspiracy theorists, right? Where it's like, everything's a conspiracy, every person's a shill, everything. It's like this projection of a very cynical worldview, right? I think there's the cynicism that really lies.
Well, Horkheimer and Adorno's Dialectic of Enlightenment is a conspiratorial type of text, actually. I mean, they wouldn't call themselves conspiracy theorists.
Take that back. No, Jay, I was going to say, tell the audience about how when you were in your grad studies and you were doing film analysis, they were teaching a film analysis through critical theory, right? And your kind of exposure with their kind of conspiracy thinking in critical theory analysis of film.
I recall we looked at maybe advertisements and stuff through critical theory analysis. We looked at the way that movies, for example, the Frankfurt School guys said that if you look at films in monopoly capitalist society, the movies themselves basically become like long trailers or advertisements for the next movie in the sequence. And so they were pointing out that it's sort of inherent in the logic of the monopoly capitalist ethos itself to operate this way, even in terms of arts. The arts all become commodified, and thus they become just more and more of a little advertisement for the next thing. So, for example, you could apply a Frankfurt School type of critique from that perspective to the way YouTube is working, where YouTube is becoming more and more corporate sort of advertisements for go watch this here, go do this here. Whereas it used to be YouTube was more of a platform for creators and people to put out their content. Now it's becoming more and more of a sort of an advertising vehicle. Think about the way TikTok squeezes videos down to like 1 minute, sort of just goofy, meaningless clips, right? The Frankfurt School analysis would be that that's the logic inherent to the system that we are in right now. So I think that's actually an insight. That's actually a good point. Does that mean that I accept their answer? Well, actually, they don't have an answer, right? I mean, they have a negative philosophy of critique. The Frankfurt School doesn't offer you any positive assessments as to how you should live. I don't know what kind of Marxist answer they would give, but they basically just kind of gave up. I mean, that's the point of the Frankfurt School, is that they figured out that the arts is basically just owned and run as a kind of mass advertising campaign. There's a bit of conspiratorial stuff going on there, but I don't think that doesn't mean that they have anything substantial to offer, any more than I could appreciate Foucault's critique of the notion of hierarchy and authority just simply being replaced after the Enlightenment with scientism men, science boys, right, lab coats. I can appreciate that critique. That doesn't mean that Foucault has something positive to give me as an answer. And so I think a lot of intellectual people, a lot of smart people fall into the trap of the let me critique and tear down everything that exists as if that's a good exercise, when if there's no positive thing to put in its place, it's empty, it's meaningless, it's worthless, it's a nihilistic exercise. It's ultimately that Joker attitude, right, of chaos for chaos sake. Yeah. It's the final stage of revolution that Father Stephen Rose talks about in his nihilism book, is that the end stage of revolution is just chaos for chaos sake, because there is no meaning. I might as well just destroy meaning. I will give meaning by destroying meaning, and that's all that you could do. So it's an exercise in futility and pointlessness. By the way, if there is no meaning, there's no impetus to tear things down either, right?
Yeah, even destruction becomes meaningless, right? Even the act of destruction that they've basically turned into their god and deified becomes meaningless. And I mean, I think you've hit on really the core of it. There is that constant critique without replacing these structures that you wish to tear down with anything that's that's built on truth, that's built on virtue.
Right. That's part of the Trotsky Lenin ethos, is constant. What is it? Lenin or Lenin said the revolution is never ending.
Right. Well, even Marx, like you read, Marx is like, well, yeah, you're going to have this perfect state, but he never says what it's going to look like. Like Marx, at no point does Marx say, like, here's what in the end result, in the eschaton, here is what it will look like once we achieve this.
He kind of does.
No, he does.
What does he say?
There will be no state, and you'll be able to wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, go out and paint and fish and live free, not alienated.
You won't be alienated from your labor, is basically, and then he calls it.
But it's like, it just seems like such empty rhetoric. It's like, what does that even mean? You won't be alienated from, you're going to be super happy. It's just like, yeah, everything's going to be great. It's like, what is that?
You'll be.
Well, it's like a libertarian dream, right? Yeah, this is why I always point out that Marx is not antithetical to libertarian.
No, he's not.
His end goal is a libertarian view.
What does he say? And it's going to be a totalitarian of the proletariat.
The dictatorship of the proletariat, yeah.
So the idea to be alienated from your labor is that who I am and what I am isn't my labor, but I'm forced in a situation where, in order for me to be who I am and live, I have to work. I have to do the things that I don't have leisure, right? So what does Marx say? I'm divided. I'm against myself. And that's because of the certain kind of conditions of world history that we're in. But eventually world history will use the capitalistic system. The capitalistic system will usher into the next stage of history in which we won't be bound by that. that I don't have to work to be who I am, I mean, to live and to be who I am. And therefore, I will be in pure leisure, that I can do whatever I want. That's the Marxian. So he does give a clear
you have
picture
your
of
coon
what that
pod.
is.
You can be in your pod and just
Yeah, you
surfing
can
the
do-
the metaverse and being whatever you want in a fake reality. I guess the fully automated luxury communism thing.
Well, I would say that the original Marxist idea appeared to have a kind of eschatology and end goal where they thought that, I'm not saying it's true, but I mean, Marx did think that technology would lead us to this kind of withering away of the state, equality, living and fishing. It's like a Walden or like a transcendentalist author's type of story. That's the end goal, is to get back to nature, because Marx thought we were alienated from nature too,
as well. Yep.
from other human beings. So he has this sort of loose idea of an agrarian style end goal with no state that technology would help us get to. But what's weird is that after the World Wars, the Frankfurt School had given up on this eschatology, and they had a very negative attitude towards human nature and whatnot, and they just had this idea of critique for critique's sake. And so they would look at, again, they would share a lot of the critiques that we have of culture, right? But that doesn't mean that they're right, and that doesn't mean that there weren't wicked, nefarious people amongst them that had evil goals of trying to tear down Western civilization, all that stuff. I'm very aware of all that. I'm just pointing out that in a book like this, you would actually be surprised at what they say, and you would find a lot of sort of quote conspiratorial types of critiques of monopoly capitalism, but that doesn't mean that I'm therefore agreeing with the Marxist Frankfurt School critiques.
It was just like the red pill and black pill crews. Like when you get to that point of just crushing up black pills and snorting them all day.
Well, what's interesting too, real quick side note on that, and I know I've talked a lot. I don't want to take away from. I'll give Father Deacon more time to talk, but when I was doing the interviews with my buddies over at PsyOps Cinema, they made a really good point that if you think about it, red pill, blue pill actually comes out of originally the stories from Philip K. Dick, and it's in Total Recall. And Arnold, if you think of the movie, Arnold takes the red pill. The red pill is actually a bad thing because it's the guy from the Total Recall company that gives him supposedly the pill that's going to wake him up and bring him out of the delusion, but it's not actually a delusion, if you remember, right? So the red pill is a lie, but it's situated in the ethos of drug culture, which was the great point about the PsyOps Cinema guys. And then when you fast forward to the Matrix, the red pill becomes something that is part of drug culture, right? Your answer is a dialectic between two types of drugs that are going to wake you up and get you out of the system, man, right? So they had a great point that actually just the whole pill system itself presupposes a kind of big pharma drug culture, a way to getting out of the system or waking up. It's just part of that same old classic counterculture bullshit that was basically given by the CIA to the 60s counterculture revolution, right? They were told and sold the idea that drugs were the way to counteract the system, when it was the system giving them the drugs as a fake counterculture to begin with. So all of that is just to say that, remember that the whole idea of the pill narrative itself, as the PsyOps Cinema guys pointed out, it actually comes out of drug culture. It's not actually anything to do. So the reality is that, and I know that people appropriated it. I'm not trying to be overly, neurotic about it, but I mean, the white pill, the God pill, that's actually the only pill, right? And the repentance pill is the way out, not doing shrooms and not going into the DMT zone and seeing the clockwork elves, right? That's not the way out of it.
Yeah, or even figuring out what all the Masons are doing and figuring out who's a shill, figure out all the people who are shills, and then it's like, well, what do you want to build? What is your life? You can't just this nihilism of destruction thing. It just ends in the destruction.
What causes
of
you
yourself.
to go insane? These people literally go into insanity. And Jay and I just talked about like TOs and stuff like this. The true Orthodox, the genuine, the schismatics, they get themselves in the same kind of thinking, conspiratorial thinking, and and black pilled. And where does it lead? Like, and Father Peter Here's did a wonderful video on this too, that Saint Justin Popovich, some of the more recent saints who had bad bishops and there was bad stuff going on. What did they do? What did the saints do? Did they go break off from the church and start their own, schismatic church? They didn't. And what you see is in like True Orthodox and schismatics and stuff like this, it's not life-giving. It's not life-creating. It doesn't build up. It further divides, it destroys, and it destroys the individual. These people either go into some kind of madness or
a lot of these people don't stay there very long anyway.
That's what I was going to say. They don't stay there. They move.
Nobody's pure enough, right? Then nobody's pure enough for you because obviously you're so pure, right? It ends in isolation.
Yeah, that's exactly, and that's how you know it's demonic. Is the devil is Diabolos, the divider. He wants to isolate. The whole, orthodoxy is triadic. It's we're Trinitarian incarnationalists. We're communal by nature. So you can spot that and see that it's like, well, if it's causing you to descend into madness and other cults and be isolated and you're all by yourself and you're miserable, and you can see these people are not happy people. It's just like some of the other secular ideologies that you see where people are always screaming and they literally, the physiognomy starts to change because their ideology corrupts them. That enough is evidence to be like, it's bad, it's no good, it's demonic.
Yeah, well said, Father.
And itself is a spirit of revolution. And I was just looking here too. Keep in mind the Reformation had its own communist sectarians and free spirit revolutionaries. The English Revolution, 1640s, produced the Levelers, the Fifth Monarchy men. Obviously, the French Revolution comes out of that as well. But they were actually communist sects, right? And we're talking about the spirit of destruction and revolution. And there's a great passage here. It says, but it wasn't until the 19th century that the radical vision of society received full and detailed elaboration at the hands of theoretically gifted and articulate spokesmen. Because I think he's thinking of Fourier and Proudhon and Marx and stuff like that. But because of the very nature of the radical vision, which is suspicious, this is exactly what we're talking about, of all structures, systems, and objectifications of the existential situation, radicals are typically declined to offer treaties in political theory. So this is what Jay was saying. Do you find them putting forth a positive vision of man, a positive political theory? No, they're deconstructionalists. They're critics. They're tearing down. They don't, the radical genius is in the sense anti-political. The most appropriate outlet for its expression is in music and art rather than political tomes. So is it any coincidence that the radicalism of the youth in the United States in the 60s and elsewhere characteristically took what type of expression? Rock music, poetry, the 60s itself, right? Underground newspapers, the Weather Underground, right? Happenings, festivals, and other theoretical innovations. And that goes all the way into the principle and exponents of that perspective, which like Herbert Marcuse and some of the people that we just mentioned. So I thought that kind of tied it in really nice to everything that we've been saying and what Jay had said, kind of following up on that.
Yeah. So I mean, so the answer is obviously not endless critique. The answer is not tear down all of the, get rid of all the, identify the conspirators, right? Which is just, it becomes endless, right? Identify all the people who are, morally corrupt and who are not pure enough, who are not perfect enough. Looks like my internet was glitching out.
Well, I mean, Witkoff had a great couple of points this last week, I noticed, where he was pointing out the futility of the notion of doing nothing but exposing evil or learning and mastering all of the evil and all the secret societies and what every celebrity is up to and doing. And I mean, it's just a total, number one, waste of time. I mean, what is it going to actually achieve for you to know all of the evils that every, you know, Satanist and occultist and Hollywood person is into? And I know, as somebody who's written, you know, 2 books on this topic, that spending a lot of time on that does put you in a dark headspace, and it can be very depressing. And I know anytime that I've put a lot of time into researching serial killers or cults and this kind of stuff, it's not easy to deal with, and it does, you know, eventually it kind of gets a little depressing. So it's not something that you can just do willy-nilly. But the idea that, you know, like you said, well, I'm going to expose everything on the internet. That's actually just part of the whole revelation of the method process. The idea that the exposure of evil is going to actually itself end evil is a ruse, right? I'm not saying that that there's not a place for it. It's rather that there has to be a balance. There has to be a wise way of going about these things, because not everybody's ready to be exposed to every level of whatever's going on. Or and there's also the notion of what's a propriety, right? What's proper to different times and places. If your whole ethos is just studying serial killers, I mean, something's off here, right? I mean, that's something weird is wrong with this person.
Right. Yeah,
there's something off.
The exposing, expose the shills, expose the bad people. If we just point out all the bad people, then we can have some, you know, perfect ordered culture. It's like, this is
like
delusion.
You said, you need at least some kind of account of what you think the good is and what's the, you know, worldview that answers that.
And which is why, you know, what is the answer to the black pill? What is the answer to the culture war? Because really the culture war is kind of like this constant dialectical tension to just destroy. Like the culture war itself is not winnable, in my opinion. Like, you're not gonna, like, if all the base conservatives start making, you know, great propaganda films for children, it's not gonna, like, you know, like giving, you know, if everybody can just replace Disney with something wholesome, then, like, you know, everything will be better. That's nonsense. It's like we have actually we have the Ark of Salvation, which is the church, which is the Orthodox Church, that gives proper place to the scriptures, gives justification for the scriptures, gives us a way to build our lives, gives us a way to structure our day and our minds through prayer and repentance, gives us a way to structure our communities through participation in prayer and repentance together in the sacramental life and in the mysteries of the church, gives us meaning, gives us a correct view of history, even gives us a correct view of what we're looking forward to as well in the eschaton. And that is the answer. The answer isn't like, you know, tear everything down. The answer is embracing Christ, right? The answer is actually embracing God and building our lives upon that. And from there, yeah, you can battle evil. But sometimes I think also that, you know, when you embrace good, sometimes that stokes up, you know, evil around you as well, right? Like that, there's nothing the demons hate more than when somebody is not in their grips anymore, and they, you know, they do attack, you know, when people start to, like, kind of extricate their lives from these forces. So yeah, I think ultimately the answer isn't more critique. The answer is building a life in Christ. All right. Looks like we got a few minutes left here. Do you guys, Father Deacon, you want to add anything else here? I think I know you guys have been hanging out for a while. Everybody's maybe getting a little hungry, maybe almost dinner time. And I know for me it is. I'm hungry.
I'm hungry for knowledge. Give me it. My mind's the only thing that exists. Give me knowledge.
Right.
What's going on in the chats here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to come check this out too. There are a few tips over here. You can read the tips. Thanks, you guys, for tipping on Rockfin. Let me make sure the Zoom meeting doesn't end. Okay, we got 8 minutes left on the Zoom meeting. Putin tipped a big old fat. Look at that. Putin dropping rubles in there. Putin tipped $100. Says, "Sweet VPN is up. Keep up the great work, my brother." Thank you very much, Putin. I appreciate that. Sean Drake tipped $5. Says, "It's been far long since I've dropped by Tristan and Jay. Here's $5 from my YouTube alter egos, Tyler Sutton II." I remember Tyler Sutton. I'm glad you're still around. Thank you very much for the support. Let's see. Some of these are questions. And ELC says, "Our lives are constructed in a narrative image in my opinion, but it's like a movie is a very cringe reductionist way of thinking about it. It's a lot more than that, and I'm only starting to realize this myself. Yeah, I was speaking of Jay's well worded rant earlier. I was talking to somebody like yesterday, and this person
Well,
was,
I mean, it's just kind of hit home because I took that as a slight at me because I mean, my life is literally a mirror of Scarface. So you're basically saying that my life isn't mirroring a Cuban expatriate gangster movie.
I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday, and I had a great conversation with him, and he was telling me like all these things that annoy him about his sister and how he's like worried about her living in a fantasy world. It was an interesting conversation when you could kind of see this person going in the other direction of like he's getting annoyed by her behavior and her influence. Pop culture is influencing this young girl. She's like 10 or something, and it's like, it's interesting. And he's coming from this thing of this position of, well, yeah, the world is programming you, and it's and my little sister is getting sucked up in all this stupid imagery, and she wants to wear cat ears on her head and stuff. And I'm just like, well, dude, you know what I mean? If you want to help her, you're not going to help her by just shutting her down. You're going to help her by like, you got to go into her world a little bit. Like you got to help her play to be more grounded in virtue and stuff. You can't just be like, stop doing that, it's dumb. Like.
So can you help me out? I'll just take it off topic for a little bit. How does the furries phenomenon arise? How does it relate to?
You're gonna have to ask Jay about that. He's the one he's into that stuff.
I mean, do you want me to get my costume on and explain it, or do you want me to just explain?
Well,
it?
what
By
was
the
your
way, there was
character
some
name?
up here in Montana, and which was really weird to see them walking on. But I just hit him in my car and chalked it up to I actually got away with it legally because I said I thought it was a deer, an animal, and they were like, that's no problem, that happens all the time up here, you are free to go.
I wouldn't chalk it up to that. I would chalk it up to chalk.com, Tonka Ali, and do
Oh.
not use
Oh snap!
do
We
not
got that
use
chalk.com.
Tristan's
Look at
promo
that.
code.
Set
Shit,
it up,
we
you
got
knock
our
them down,
super-
man. Oh yeah.
Do not use Tristan's promo code.
Don't use, you guys, whatever you do, don't go to chalk.com, and don't use
Tristan's
coupon
tetragrammaton code.
Do not use coupon code. You're not allowed to use coupon code BIG50 for 50% off chalk.com. Best quality adaptogens.
Maybe you care to answer why your promo code is the gematria equivalent of the abyss.
Oh man.
Maybe you care to answer that right now?
Well, I'm just, you know what's cool? I got mute capabilities. So if Jay tries to drop his promo code, I'll just mute him. I just mute him over here in the OBS dashboard. That's big 50. You guys are gonna have to use that big 50, BIG 50 for 50% off chalk.com. All right, we got 5 minutes left on the.
So I don't know the actual origin of the whole history of furries. I have no idea what the actual origin is, but you do see it in movies like The Shining. So perhaps the elite were into this like back then, but I'm not positive. But my suspicion is that it's preparing us for the next kind of thing that should be accepted. Bestial type of relations was probably the next step after the acceptance of the PEDO stuff. That would be my guess.
Well, literally also too, it's dehumanizing.
Yeah, it relates to transhumanism as well, because the idea is that there is no such thing as person or human being. Those are relative concepts, and so it's part of postmodernism to basically.
And you can interchange these things. They can just be you can pick whatever avatar you are.
And it's infantilizing, right? It's about getting people to live in a fantasy world. The world should be as false as possible. I think ultimately it's a demonic thing to dehumanize and infantilize people.
Well, I mean, when we think of demonic possession, you think of people acting like animals, like rolling around, foaming, barking. These are common descriptors of exorcisms. And now here you have people literally saying that they are animals and acting like animals. So, I mean, to me, it seems like 100% dissociation and or demonic possession.
Yeah, well said. Well said. We got ELC dropping $10. Thank you very much, ELC. Regular tipper over here. He says, the first time I ever visited an Orthodox church, I took a lift home and the driver was a Tartaria guy. I mean, that's another one of these stupid, just epistemologically retarded conspiracy theories where it's like, it just leaves you baseless. Like, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys heard of the Tartaria, the mud flutters?
Yes.
What is it?
The books in here are even mad at that. The books are we gotta get exorcism here. The books are flying off the table. Yeah, I don't know why where this came from or who came up with this. And I mean, I just think it's so silly, but there are people who are like completely devoted to this Tartaria thing. So basically there's a civilization that for some reason was destroyed in a mud flood that the elites don't want us to know about.
Free energy,
Wakanda?
bro. They had it all. Everything was
Wakanda.
free.
Why are we not supposed to know about it? Because they had free energy.
Tesla, free energy everywhere, and there was just highly advanced and it was covered with mud. No, it's like
Right?
Wakanda for white people.
Oh, okay.
There we go. That's a good descriptor.
I think it came from some Russian New Ager guy. I mean, a big part of it is to
It did.
try to
I remember
undermine.
seeing videos from a Russian YouTube channel a long time ago about this.
Yeah,
And I
it
just
comes from
sort
like
of-
Russian and like maybe I don't know some Slavic people got into it. I don't know. I mean, it's a way
There
to
was
try
a
to deny
girl
the
who used
history
to
of the
make
church.
videos. Yeah, she did a whole documentary on St. Petersburg, and her whole thing was that none of this can be replicated anymore. So it had to have been this advanced technology that nobody knows about.
Yeah. No, thank you for the tips, guys. Hey, let me got another tip over here. What do the three of you do for fitness? We got like literally 60 seconds left. We might have to reboot Zoom again. We just talk for fitness. We just move our mouths.
So I've been working out again now that it's not freezing cold outside. We do really long 3, 4, 5 mile walks. I'm up to 120 crunches a day, so I do that.
By crunches, he means eating chips. Like 120 chips.
I call them crunchies. Yeah, I do crunchies,
Nice.
aka just eating cheese puffs.
I do
Well,
a little
I
lifting
was-
sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, the Deacon
Tristan's
skis.
looks like. Yeah, I was skiing up until last weekend. Now the weather's better. The snow's gone, and so it's my wife and I are starting back hiking. But yeah, I want to get back into doing some weights and stuff like that.
You know, we got less than a minute. You guys, we got a couple more super chats. Can we reboot and finish like 5
Yeah,
minutes
that's
left? Okay, sorry guys.
That's fine.
Yeah, all right. Audience, excuse me. I'm gonna send the dudes a new. I'll send you both it in Skype. Okay. Send Father Deacon Ananias, Father Deacon Doctor Ananias, and Jay a new link for the Zoom. Excuse me, my boomer tech skills over here. I didn't realize I didn't have Zoom Premium. I should have checked earlier. So thank you guys who are watching. We got a couple more super chats to read. We're even getting proper super chats. Look at that. We get some tips on Rockfin. The Rockfin homies, the bigots over on Rockfin, consistent tippers, right? Consistent tippers on Rockfin. I want to thank all you guys, especially your boy Putin over there, dropping that big old fat tip, and then the other ELC tipping on Rockfin as well. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for the support. And you can support the streams by sharing the videos. Your tips are always appreciated, but you can also share the videos. You can like the videos. You can do all that stuff. And you can support yourself and support your health by hitting up chalk.com, getting some of that purified shit legit, using that coupon code BIG50. Whatever you do, you can't use
J50, you mean? I think you meant to say J50.
I'm pretty sure it was BIG50 will get you 50% off, plus they actually will garnish Jay's
What's going to happen when I start selling chalk, and then we're all going to be like competing?
I'll just make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Deacon
no, we're not gonna let
Put
that
in your
happen.
Deacon 50 code.
We've
Deacon 50.
so hit him up at
By the way, Tristan, I know you've been-
choq.com, BIG50.
You've been pretty quiet since my latest R&B single dropped, so
Yeah.
I noticed that might have kind of run you off. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
pretty
look,
much.
man, look, I'm not trying to have like a rap battle here because I can just drop some of the sickest flows out the straight, like right
well,
off
that's
the
why I
dome.
went to an R&B single, and I noticed you got really quiet. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just like, I'm not trying to, you seem like you should have been embarrassed enough. I didn't know if you wanted me to like drop some sick flows, like, and I wake up in the
Yes,
morning.
indeed. Okay.
I wake in the morning and I step
With the
outside.
discount code. What up?
Yo, hey, yo, I wake in the morning and I step outside. I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream at the top of my lungs. Yo, what's going on? Yo, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, what's going on? Like, I could just make up rhymes that, like, nobody's even ever heard before like that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I got exposed by Jay. Jay found the me in the record shop picking up metal albums.
Yes, somebody sent a picture of a Deacon going through the thrash metal section, and it looked a lot like you. So,
Pretty sure everybody who's at metal record stores looks a little bit like Father Deacon Ananias.
no, but he was in a cassock. So
He was in a
not-
cassock and he had
Not
his
everybody
head.
at record stores in a cassock.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Look at this. Chase Haggard, my estranged brother, who excommunicated me from the family, says, "Can someone thank you for the $5 donation?" I only allow my brother to talk to me with donations. This is pretty much the only time
That's
we
an
communicate.
excellent idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, most of my family, most of my family only speaks to me through super chats at this point. He says, "Can
Hey,
someone?"
Mom, $10 from Mom says, when you gonna get a job? What?
Jay says, "Can someone tell Jay to ask Father Ananias to tell Tristan that the family accepts him again, but we aren't ready to speak? Thanks, thank you."
I would remind everybody too that Jamie's podcast is happening tonight. So if you want to go watch her in a little bit, you can head on over to her YouTube channel as well for her
Well, that's nice.
podcast. They're doing Weird Disney tonight. So
There we go. All right, Pano Costaros donated $5. Says, "Jay, that's Matthew McConaughey from the future in the fifth dimension pushing books off your shelf."
That's right.
yeah, that's I believe that actually.
What was the movie again?
Interstellar.
Interstellar, right there.
He's literally right behind the church fathers back there, like pushing off the books.
That'd be a great skit, actually, to do. Like you're in a debate and you're trying to look against this papist.
And Matthew McConaughey is he's like helping me by pushing the right book off of the shelf.
Exactly right. Every Orthodox would love that movie.
He's gonna go to Sixth Council. He's gonna side Pope Saint Agatho. You better side this right here, right?
And then a book falls off the shelf.
I'm down. We'll have to see if maybe we can get Chalk to produce that. But only if you use coupon code BIG50 rather than that other coupon code.
And then we'll have my friend Mark Wahlberg play Jay Dyer in the movie.
Well, I mean, if you want to use, so my promo code gives you a better 50% discount. I mean, if you want to use
But when you use mine, though, it actually, every time you use my 50%, you get 50% off, and then they take away 50% from Jay's most recent shill sale, and they actually give that straight to Greta Thunberg to stop climate change. So 50% less climate change.
You don't even sell shill legit. You sell shill legit. That's the only thing you sell.
You should say that with every discount code you enter, you get that closer to getting an infinity stone.
The only supplement Tristan sells is shill legit.
She's legit to quit.
I don't get it. All right, we got ELC. It says our lives are oh wait, one more from ELC over here, not that one. Matt tipping $10. Thank you very much. ELC tip $5. Says lots of Orthodox saints, elders, etc. have said conspiratorial things in the past and even today about Kuf, Masonry, Zionism, etc. But it seems like this comes from having knowledge of and communion with Christ first and foremost, because then he gives you the discernment to know what is and isn't from him. Exactly. I mean, if you're just going to critique all this stuff, well, why is it bad? Why is Masonry bad if you're an atheist? Like, you don't have an answer.
That's my new metal band, Discernment. Yeah. It sounds like a cheesy Protestant metal band. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Discernment.
Right. Well, let's close it up a little bit. Father Deacon, Dr. Ananias, you've got the Patristic Faith YouTube channel going now. You got that Patristic Faith website. I think there are a lot of people who are I mean, it's been amazing the last few years. There have been so many people who are becoming Orthodox or becoming interested in Orthodoxy. If people are becoming interested in Orthodoxy, if maybe they're just hearing about it recently, kind of wanted to ask you where you would recommend. What would you recommend they do? Should they maybe try to go attend a divine liturgy? What are some steps that people should take to either learn more about Orthodoxy or maybe
I'd start with the
possibly-
Vespers. You you know, a lot of parishes and parish priests too will give you a tour, like before you even get to attend a service. You know, maybe call up one of your local priests, Orthodox priests, and just say, hey, I'm interested in Orthodoxy. You might kind of give me a tour and tell me a little bit about that. You know, just kind of taking baby steps into. And then what I need you to do is to subscribe to Patristic Faith, and we will take care of you from there. No, but always being plugged into like a real community and stuff like that, really seeing what that's like. And we do our best online with the clergy and talents like Jay and the rest of the Orthodox scholars and laity to provide the best kind of Orthodox quality and educational materials, both spiritually and intellectually, and apologetics out there. And it's been a great success. I thank Jay and everybody that's contributed and helped, and RT web guy Chase Mudd. I'd like to also thank the Lord Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity, my record producer. Who else am I missing? Mom, Dad, my brother.
It's not an awards ceremony.
Yeah, we didn't give you.
You don't need to
probably,
slap
Deacon, I'm
Tristan.
sorry,
Don't slap Tristan.
You've not been awarded anything except our thank yous for coming on and giving such a great perspective today. But yeah, I love the work you guys are doing over there at Patristic Faith, and I always relish the opportunity to have a chat with you and to pick your brain a little bit, and sometimes
We'll put this up on Patristic Faith. Cool. How about that?
Mr. J. Dyer, what's up, man? What else? You got Jamie stream tonight over on YouTube. What's the YouTube channel?
Well, I'm not sure when they're gonna post it. It'll either be tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, she's doing a weird Disney stream, and I'm gonna do probably a weird Disney stream as well on my Rockfin. And then I'm kind of bored with the same old that I always do. So I'm gonna be analyzing. Yeah, well, that's why I've dip my feet into other creative ventures like my R&B single that just dropped, Hey Piggies.
Critical theory analysis of R&B.
Well, I am going to do some lit stuff. So next up will be a big analysis of the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy. I'm really into that, halfway through in the middle of the second book. And then probably going to do some more literary books, because at a certain point, it's like, how many stupid movies do I have to break down? I will be still doing bad movies, B movies and stuff like this, but like everybody was like, are you going to break down the new Batman? Are you going to do the new Batman? Why do I even want to do garbage movies like this? Why don't I just do a literary analysis of Dostoevsky? That's much more interesting.
Well, I'm glad. I actually, after our last conversation, I started reading The Underground Man, and it's funny because that book actually really ties in what we're talking about here. How this, the Underground Man is much like the black-pilled conspiracy theorist who despises the culture he lives in, feels emasculated by the world, and he's hyper rationalistic. Everything is deterministic. It's like, well, 2 + 2 = 4, therefore, the world is as it is. And
talking about the Clark and Notes from the Underground.
Yeah. The Underground Man in there. He's like basically like unnamed, right? He doesn't even have a character, doesn't even have a name, but he's just pure. And I'm only about a third of the way into the book, but yeah, it's a fantastic book, Dostoevsky.
Jay, why don't you drop to this Friday? We may be doing the geopolitical analysis.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. I will still be doing all the same analysis I do. I'm just
of some current events with somebody famous.
Yeah, well, Jim Jotras will be doing a stream with Jim Jotras, I guess, on my Rockfin, and then Father Deacon's going to put whatever clips are appropriate on his YouTube channel, depending on where we go and what we talk about. Yeah, that's a good
Oh
one. And
wow,
also,
they
by the
just
way,
deleted my YouTube channel right after you said that. What?
We got to have you guys make sure to drop Father Deacon's YouTube channel in the chat if we got some. I'm sure some of you guys already have some of the mods up there.
So we had a really big response to the last YouTube, or the last Alex Jones hour that I hosted, where I covered Bertrand Russell's scientific outlook.
Oh, that was
So-
great, man. I can't say enough great things about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that it's really, I keep wanting to get him up to 1 million views. That one got about 700,000
That was
combined
awesome.
with Alex's show. So I always like fall right under like 1 million views on those. So I'm really happy to be I'm thankful to have that exposure and have that that venue. So I mean, as far as I know, I'll probably be hosting Alex this week as well. So look for that either probably Friday at 2.
Perfect. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody
Great
for
chat.
watching. Guys, share
God
the
bless
videos.
everybody.
Yeah, share the videos.
Blessed rest of Lent to all of you. May we be crucified so we can rise on resurrection with Christ.
Amen. All right, guys.